Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Tooth Teacher Tuesday. Special in the sense that we're continuing our series on dental insurance, the ins and outs of it. Just about wrapped up with it, but today's episode is kind of special because I'm going to be diving into some of the more political side of things, which, as you saw at the beginning of the video, might be triggering for some. I know not everybody likes talking politics, and I typically try to avoid talking politics in my videos, and that's still my goal today. I'm going to try to avoid any political opinion and just stick to the political facts about the changes in our healthcare system and how that's affected cost of healthcare and insurance and things like that. So, but again, you've been warned. If you're not a politics person, might want to move on from this video. So, and this is probably going to be a long one. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to be talking about different little bits and pieces, but at the end I'll kind of tie them all together and see how it all has formed an intricate web. But to start off with, I guess the basic overview is the reason for increasing healthcare costs and decreasing insurance reimbursement. It basically boils down to, like most things, greed. Between our government having increasing involvement in healthcare and the increasing involvement of Wall Street and Wall Street lobbyists who are essentially turning healthcare from a service industry into just a product and taking the care out of healthcare by just essentially turning healthcare into a factory, just cranking out different healthcare services with only profits in mind. So, first aspect that ties into that is college tuition. And what I mean by that is, since the 1980s, varying sources have different numbers, but for example, Forbes lists the increase in college tuition from the 1980s until present to be around roughly 180% increase. So about doubling of college tuition over the last 30, 40 years. And that's not necessarily taking into account private versus public schools, but for all intents and purposes, we'll say college tuition has doubled since the 1980s. And the reason that's important is, in late 80s, early 90s, that's when a lot of dentists who are currently retiring were graduating dental school. And so that generation of dentists that's retiring, their college tuition, their costs of going through dental school or medical school or any other kind of professional school has at the very least doubled. But these stats that I'm pulling from are only talking about an undergraduate degree. So I can't find any stats for professional school, but I can guarantee you it's at least double, if not more. The significance of that is the generation of dentists that I'm a part of, we're coming out of school with a lot more debt. And, there's no incentive for our government or for Wall Street to decrease that debt. If you need any further evidence, look at the recent Supreme Court ruling stating that they're not intending to cancel student debt from the last several years. So again, increasing costs of going to medical or dental school in this current generation, that'll come into play in a second. Well, so keep that in mind. We'll tie that back in a moment. So I mentioned government and Wall Street infiltration in healthcare. It's no secret, no surprise that over the past decade or so, healthcare is the government's become increasingly involved in healthcare. And again, keeping politics out, regardless of how you feel about that, is just a fact. And again, the incentive there is not to so much improve the quality of healthcare, but to make it a money-making scheme. And again, that's because, like it or not, a lot of our political leaders are backed by Wall Street lobbyists who are CEOs of various healthcare entities, whether it be insurance companies or various hospitals, corporate dental facilities, so on and so forth. So, again, how that ties in is those lobbyists want the government to make political moves that are going to increase their profits. The way to do that is to increase the cost of healthcare and, decrease how much doctors, dentists, so on and so forth are making. So again, we'll tie back into that in a second. If you want a really good insight into changes in our healthcare system, there's an interesting show from a couple years ago, kind of a bit of a, we'll say, obnoxious show, but very enlightening. Show's called Adam Ruins Everything. And there's a particular episode that talks about healthcare and the increasing costs and why they're so high. And the short version of that is that, at least for the medical side of things, every hospital has a document that is called a charge master. And essentially what that document is a document that says our fees are this absurdly high number. But if you've got insurance, it's going to bring it way, way, way down here. And the existence of that charge master came about, again, around the 1980s as both politicians and Wall Street lobbyists realized that insurance for healthcare is a great way to make money. And they want it to seem like they're saving people a lot of money so that more people will use their healthcare insurance. So the insurance companies got in bed with the hospitals and basically said, well, we want our people to think we're saving them a bunch of money. So we need you to create these false fees that are absurdly high to make it look like we're writing off a bunch of money, when in reality, the hospitals don't need to charge that much money, but it looks like they would normally charge that money without insurance. And so that's essentially what a charge master is. And kind of the crappy side of that is it's raised the cost of healthcare for those who don't have insurance, because if you're not in network with that particular hospital, they are going to charge you those false prices that are absurdly high. And that's why if you ever have looked at a bill from a hospital, the costs are just absurd. And even with insurance, the costs are absurd. But if you had no insurance, a simple hospital stay is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. And does it really cost that much? No. But again, it is this false sense of upcharging invoked by the insurance companies to make it look like they're saving you money, when in reality, they're not saving you any more money. They're just, essentially tricking you and profiting off of that lack of knowledge. Probably not explaining it very well at all. But like I said, look up the show Adam Ruins Everything. Um, the episode's called Adam Ruins the Hospital, and it explains it much better than I can. And like I said, it's a decent show for learning all sorts of other misconceptions about our society. But anyway, moving on from that, all that to say, that's been a big driver of increasing healthcare costs over the last several decades. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and look up the income for various CEOs for different healthcare insurance companies. It's especially noteworthy, for example, from the year 2019 to 2020. We all remember what happened. We suffered a global pandemic, and for example, David Cordani, CEO of Cigna Insurance, his income in 2019 was 13.4 million. Poor thing. In 2020, his income increased significantly to 79 million. And all this while the rest of the company was suffering, or excuse me, the rest of the country, the rest of the world was suffering. People were dying, but this guy and CEOs of all these other health insurance companies, their income is going up significantly. And do you know why that is? It's because anybody with any kind of health insurance paid into it at the beginning of the year, but then once everything started shutting down, at least, there may have been emergency visits due to the pandemic, due to COVID, but a lot of people were not using their medical and dental benefits because everything was shut down. Everybody was staying inside unless they had an emergency and needed to go to the hospital. And even then, at that point in time, health insurance wasn't covering things like ventilators or the different medications that were necessary to treat COVID because this was all new. This was not something usual that health insurance was prepared to cover. And so all these benefits that people paid into were not being utilized, and the health insurance companies were banking on the difference there. And again, they profited off of everybody else's suffering. And I take issue with that. And I'm sure I'm not alone. Yeah, and all that to say that, again, these insurance companies, this is a point I've made before, they have no incentive for you to use your benefits. They would be happiest if you paid your deductible and then never used any of your benefits, because then they never have to pay a claim. And all those unpaid claims are profit for them. And that's exactly what happened in 2020, and they'd be happy if that continued. And that's the unfortunate reality of the society we live in. So again, tying this all back together, essentially the increasing costs in our healthcare system is because of Wall Street and our government. And on top of that, our universities and our insurance companies, all four of those entities are in bed with each other. And let's add on the dental side of things a fifth entity, which is these corporate dental offices, which again, I've got friends who have been in corporate dental places, so I'm not criticizing corporate dental. I'm criticizing the political ramifications of their existence. Because all of these entities are in bed with each other, and it's all to profit. It's all about money. And so, to tie things together, the cost of medical or dental school is increasing. What that is doing to this current generation of dentists is making them come out with significantly more debt than dentists who are retiring now when they graduated 30, 40 years ago. And by having more debt, it makes it that much harder for, at least in the dental side of things, to come out of school and have your own private practice, because you've got all that debt. Who wants to take on more debt to buy a private practice when you can go into a corporate place that's promising you more money and, you know, helping you pay off your debt quicker and no stress of running a dental office? And so there again, there's an incentive to increase the cost of tuition in dental school, to make dental students more desperate. And basically this has already happened in healthcare. I mean, you think about it, the private medical practice really doesn't exist anymore. Pretty much any doctor is part of a hospital system. You know, there's really not any medical doctors that operate on their own. And it's becoming increasingly the case in dentistry. You know, the private practice is becoming a thing of the past, and more dentists are choosing to become part of some sort of corporate dental practice. And again, that's not judgment, that's just a statement of fact. And again, I attribute that a lot to the increasing cost of dental school tuition. And on top of that, again, everybody being in bed with each other, you've got the government who not only is profiting off of increased tuition, and that's why tuition has increased so much, is because the government realized that they can take our tax dollars, loan it out to us taxpayers to pay our college tuition, and then we have to pay it back to the government with interest. And so essentially the government is profiting off of us paying back the very tax dollars we already paid. They're using our tax dollars as a bank to profit off of us as citizens. And again, that's one reason for tuition costs to increase. But then when you add in the incentive of insurance companies and corporatized healthcare wanting them to increase our debt to make us more desperate to join their ranks, it's just made more and more doctors, you know, too in debt to want to take on the increased risk of having their own practice. And again, on top of that, I would add in the schools themselves, because again, the schools are profiting off of increased tuition. And I can tell you from my own experience in dental school that the dental schools are in bed with these insurance companies and these corporate dental places, because they're in there all the time wanting to talk to students and try to basically have them drink their Kool-Aid and partner with them. And again, that's not to be judgmental. It's just the reality. That's the reality of their business structure, to snag students who are desperate to pay off their student loans and get them on board as soon as they come out of school. And another piece of the puzzle there being that a lot of these corporate dental offices, again, not going to name names, but I'm sure we all can think of a few, they are in bed with the dental insurance companies in the sense that the dental insurance companies know their corporate dental is too big to fail, and so the dental insurance companies want to keep corporate dentistry happy. So dentists that work at any kind of corporate are getting much better reimbursement from dental insurance compared to those in private practice. So again, making it much less profitable to be private and more profitable to join a corporate dental practice. So a lot of moving parts here. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but again, tying that all together, when the government has financial incentive to increase tuition, Wall Street has financial incentive to increase tuition so that you come out and go in network with their dental insurances and join their corporate dental practice. And then on top of that, the dental schools or colleges in general have financial incentive to increase tuition. All of that creates a perfect storm for healthcare providers to have more debt and become more desperate to, again, join some sort of corporate practice and accept as much dental insurance as possible, regardless of how well the insurance reimburses. So, yeah, I know this is a lot of information to process. Again, it probably sounds like some kind of conspiracy theory, but again, all of this is rooted in fact, regardless of political alliance. And that is why our healthcare costs are increasing. And it's getting to the point that something has to change. Either dentistry will go the way of medicine and there will be no more private practices. Everyone will work for some sort of corporatized dental practice, or we as healthcare workers can stand up and take a stand. And so this is our second to last video discussing dental insurance reform and the ins and outs of it. And so the last topic we'll talk about in a couple weeks will be the change that is coming, how dentists are standing up and bracing for a revolution where we start dropping dental insurance, where we stop working for corporate dental practices. And so I'm very excited to talk about the positive changes that are coming. Thank you for sticking it out. I know this has been a long video, but I hope this has been a good knowledge base for you to understand that increasing healthcare costs have nothing to do with greed by doctors and dentists, and everything to do with the greed behind the scenes with our government and with these Wall Street billionaires who are basically using us as puppets. So I hope I haven't offended anybody. If I have, I am more than happy to discuss any of this in a civil manner. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to sign off because I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. But yeah, this has been a good discussion, and I'm excited for the changes that are coming. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next week.